Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the podcast, Sunday Sitdown. I need to start remembering the name in my introductions, and we are happy that you're with us. We're talking about everybody's favorite R words. It's not reduce, reuse, and recycle. It is revenge, retribution, and rejection. So you may already want to turn this thing off. But we hope that it helps you think a little bit deeper about your own faith, your relationship to Jesus, your relationship to others. And ultimately, we hope that this pushes you toward community and conversation and deeper connection with those around you.
You missed another, you could have had more alliteration there. Community, what was the other word you said? Community. Conversation and Christ-likeness.
There we go. If I do too many of those, though, I just start saying the wrong words.
That's fair.
It's just like, I got two in me. Yeah. That's it. That's all. Hey, we do. We hope that this encourages you this week. Mm-hmm. And we know that many of you listen to these things in the car, on your drive, where things like revenge and retribution might become part of, your way of being or felt experience. And we also know that many of you are just out for walks, working out, exercising, doing chores, commuting to work, all the places. But really, at the end of the day, we want you to hear this. We hope that our conversation challenges you to have your own conversations with those around you about the deep and meaningful things of faith. So we're in Luke 9 still, which if you are not new, won't surprise you. We've got one more week left in Luke 9, and then we're into 10. Yeah. So this week we will close out Luke 9, but let's jump in. This passage is short enough. Justin, why don't you read it for us?
Yeah,
and
I'd love to.
We'll jump into some conversation.
Sounds good. And it's worth noting we did miss last week. We missed it. We missed a week. It doesn't happen often. I think it's only the second time it's happened. But so we didn't get to unpack the previous week, partly because of this guy. I'm pointing to myself if you're listening, having an illness. And so that kind of threw off our week substantially, but we'll make up for it with a good one today, hopefully.
We're back.
All right, let me read from Luke 9, starting at verse 51. So as the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. And he sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. When the disciples James and John saw this, they asked, "Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy them?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them. And he and his disciples went to another village.
So it's probably worth connecting some dots, I think, because we didn't have a conversation. So thanks for that reminder. We were talking about this, I'm already so far into future passages this coming Sunday. I'm having a hard time even remembering this past Sunday and then the Sunday previous, but worth connecting a few dots for people. The main event in our passage from this past Sunday is Jesus and his disciples not being welcomed, and that word is used specifically, by this Samaritan city, by the people in this town. If you look back at the disciples arguing about who is the greatest in the kingdom, what Jesus says is whoever welcomes. Right? So it's all about hospitality. Jesus has just taught the disciples about they themselves learning to welcome and embrace the last and the least. So giving hospitality, giving what is due a guest of honor to little children who in Jesus's day were not deserving of that type of welcome and hospitality. So the disciples have just got a teaching from Jesus on hospitality, and it's not one where they look great. Like they're thinking they're trying to push out. There's this guy running around casting out demons in Jesus's name. That's not one of the disciples, and the disciples are all worried about it. They're like, not that guy, right? We don't have to welcome him. Like we don't have to embrace him. He's not included. Certainly, he doesn't count. He's not one of like the in crowd. And Jesus, like they're arguing around, who's the greatest. Jesus says, you need to learn how to welcome the least. And then they're like, yeah, but not this guy. Like, no, even that guy. And then now they're on the receiving end of like inhospitality.
Yeah.
And they're angry about it. So I think
a little bit of irony.
It is.
Yeah,
it's painful to watch the disciples go through this over and over again, because they just don't. It's like they're not getting it. They're now angry for the thing. It's like they flip, so they don't offer hospitality. Jesus is like, hey, you got to offer it to the last and the least. Now they're like, oh, look, they're not offering hospitality. Now we're going to be angry. But it's like they flip, and now they're angry, and they've got this indignation because they're not receiving hospitality after they were just lectured on giving hospitality. Yeah. So man, the disciples are going through this like back and forth kind of whiplashy, not understanding what hospitality really is and looks like. And now they've got their backs up because they're not being shown hospitality.
And they respond in a way that, and you kind of went through this on Sunday of like, it almost seems like if you remove from context, very random, like, would you call down fire from heaven? Like, do you want us to do that for you? Like, we'll do it. And obviously it's a callback to Elijah the prophet and the events that happened in at the top of the mountain there with the prophets of Baal. But it's such a it's a comical response in some ways, right? And I don't know whether it's intended to be, but for me as a modern reader, it reads almost like this is unbelievable. Like,
yeah, it is. So you get the disciples who couldn't cast out the demon from the kid. Jesus has to step in, and now they're like, but we'll call down fire from heaven. And like I read that and I go, no, you won't. Maybe
you couldn't do it before. You couldn't do you couldn't do anything before. So what makes you think you can do this?
What makes you think? Yeah. And I think I said that on Sunday, and like, obviously it's not in the text, so you can't read it into it. But I like to think that it's kind of there. Yeah. At any rate, that's what goes through my mind. It is. So it's the disciples are pulling forward from their history from 1 Kings 18, which is the contest on Mount Carmel, where the prophets of Baal or Baal and the prophets of Asherah.
I've heard another Baal. I've heard that as well.
Yeah. I'm probably going to say it wrong in different ways for the rest of the podcast. I think I
said just name it and just go with it.
I said it both ways in the sermon. It's like, just depends on the sentence. But here's the connection there that I think makes it make a little bit more sense is the way I read that 1 Kings 18 and kind of the lead up to it is, I believe it's, so Ahab is king at this point. There's famine. People are starving. And a lot of it has to do with the people rejecting God. So the people have rejected God because they've been led astray by these prophets. And Elijah comes and he says, hey, let's set the record straight. No more 1 foot in, 1 foot out. No more following Asherah, Baal, and their prophets, and God and his Elijah. But it's you're all in or you're all out. And we're actually going to double down on that specific idea this coming Sunday, where Jesus says you can't look back. You have to look forward. And what he's saying is you're either all in or you're not. And so in 1 Kings, what's happened is that the people are not all in. They're very split. Their loyalty is split. And in splitting their loyalty, they're rejecting God, because God says, listen, like, I'm it or not at all. And so Elijah calls everybody up to the top of the mountain. He says, hey, whichever God shows up and lights this altar on fire, that's the true God. All of it, like, that stage is set because the people have rejected God. And so I think that in some way, now also, if you look, like, there are some geographical similarities and Even like Samaria is named in the lead up to that contest on the top of Mount Carmel. So there's even cultural, historical similarities there in terms of where they are. None of that made it into the sermon, but like there's a lot of those cues would kind of be prompting the disciples who then say, oh, we think we know what this is. The people of Israel rejected God. Elijah called down fire from heaven. Prophets are killed at the end. All of that started because the people rejected God. Now these people are rejecting Jesus. They don't follow the true God. They worship not in Jerusalem. Should we call down fire? So the similarities start to mount, and then you go, okay, that it does make some sense why they're immediately there in their minds.
Yeah, because it feels a little extreme, but when you unpack the context, it definitely makes a lot more sense. And then on top of that, the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritan people, which you unpacked a little bit as well. But it's hard for us to comprehend just how deep the chasm is between these people. It was the hatred between them. I think there are probably some modern analogs. You can, listener, fill in the blanks with what you think it might be, because I'm not going to name them. But I think we could think of some modern analog to that. But I don't think that we here in North America have a similar divide in the way that these two people did.
No, I don't think so. So yeah, deeply historical, deeply theological, political.
It's all of it.
It's everything that you're told, like, hey, on a first date, don't talk about these things. Or like when you meet your potential future in-laws for the first time, don't talk about these things. It's like all of those.
Religion, race, culture, politics, all of the things.
It's all of it wrapped together, right? So, which, essentially is the human experience. But it very, very deep divide. And it does lend power to the way Jesus wants to talk about the hospitality that's meant to be given within the kingdom of God, right? When he tells the parable of the Good Samaritan, and when he's talking through how to properly love your neighbors, he's not talking about loving people that you enjoy being around. He's not like, hey, they invited us for a barbecue last week, so we're going to go help shovel their snow, like their driveway. It's not, this isn't like friendly, love your neighbors. It is love people you are deeply divided with, and who you have deep, deep disagreement on, and even resentment toward at times. But, love the people that you've been placed beside. That's a much more radical call to hospitality. And it's also like, it's wild to see Jesus telling the story around, in a sense, like the hero of the Good Samaritan is exactly it's exactly not the person they would have been expecting.
Yes. Yeah.
So, big divide. But all of it kind of lands on this idea of rejection. So the people of Samaria in this town are themselves, like, historically, I think, somewhat like internalized as a culture, a rejected people.
Yes. Right. And so in some ways it makes sense that they would, they would have their hackles up a little bit, and they're not going to be automatically receptive to this message that Jesus and his disciples were bringing. Like it makes sense. We see elsewhere, I think, like John chapter 4, the woman at the Samaritan woman at the well, and that story there, you see it doesn't start, it happens slowly over time, where they build this relationship and connection, and then the gospel spreads to the Samaritan people there. But here, they're not ready for it.
No.
They're not ready for it, and they reject it.
Right. Yeah. And I think you can see, like, you can be really practical here. You can see how, for us, I think it's still the same inside of relationship. Rejection begets rejection, right? How many times do you, with friends, spouses, relatives, parents in law, like whoever the relationship, name a relationship. But how often do you reject because you feel that you've been rejected?
Right.
And that's a spiral of negative sort of, I feel rejected, so therefore I'm going to reject. Rejection begets more rejection, and that chasm just grows, which is exactly what's happened here over a long period of time. Like we're talking hundreds of years at this point. So it is a situation where, it's not as simple as this one town just didn't accept Jesus, so we're going to be angry.
Yeah.
This is, generation after generation of people who are deeply divided and have been like pushed away. And I think, again, just really practically in terms of our own relationships, I know that there are seasons and there are moments where I need to just choose to stop that cycle, where you just have to actually name it and stop that. Like, I feel rejected, you feel rejected, I'm prone to reject, pushing harder.
Yeah.
There's, I think, a significant, practical wisdom to learning to name that and just arresting it. Because how many, even just, I think of how many marriages have wrestled with that kind of negative input, feedback loop, spiral of, rejection.
And rejection is common to all of us. It's something we all experience in one way or another, whether it's a job rejection or, unrequited love or just someone who you want to like you doesn't like you. Even going back to elementary school, right? Where you try to be friends with someone and they just sort of shove you off, right? But it gets at something so core to our identity, right? That when we feel rejected, we take it naturally, very personally, very deeply. And one thing I've noticed in myself as I've experienced rejection in various ways is that when I've been unhealthy, and I would say I would categorize that as not connected with God in healthy ways, in healthy rhythms, when I am listening to voices I ought not to listen to, when I am unhealthy, I end up experiencing the rejection so much more personally, so much more unobjectively, and it rattles me to my core. And I can name a season where I was feeling a number of rejections, and feeling like a whole bunch of people separately were all rejecting me. It was in a tough season of ministry. And meanwhile, there were so many other who were surrounding me with love and care and support and propping me up, but all I could focus on was the rejection.
Yeah.
And so I think about that, and then I think about how we can receive rejection in a healthy way. The disciples did not receive rejection in a healthy way here. They kind of played into the history, and they played into all of the things and they were like, let's just destroy them. Which, I think that categorically unhealthy. But when I know who I am, just feeling sure of who I am in Christ, who I am just as an individual, when I know my strengths, when God is affirming who I am, not everything, because I'm not perfect. We all know that. But that when God is speaking into my life in that way, then I can experience that rejection in a very different way of hey, this is not the end of the world.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. Rejection, I think at its core is connected to identity. And so a couple of weeks ago, we talked about some of these core longings that people have. And I'm borrowing language from Terry Wardle and others who talk about like the human being having these created longings, like heart longings. So these are desires, wants, needs. We're kind of wrap all of that up into one, but they're going to pull you in directions. You are going to constantly be seeking them because you've been created for them. And one of the core longings is to belong.
Yeah.
And another one of the six is I can't remember the exact. I think it's significance. It's either significance or purpose that he uses, and anyways, I can't remember the exact word. But so I think rejection hits at multiple levels of that. So it speaks in a negative way against that belonging, right? So each of us want, need, long, desire, look for belonging. We need to know that there is a community that we are a part of and that we fit within that community. And it's kind of like we see the disciples fighting amongst themselves, who's the greatest.
That's exactly what they're looking for.
They're looking for, exactly. So they're doing this social comparison thing where we constantly compare ourselves to other people because I'm trying to understand who I am and I'm trying to understand where I belong.
Yeah.
Do I belong? Like, is there a place for me? Is there a role for me? Do I have, is there something meaningful for me to contribute that I can uniquely contribute to this community? That's what we're trying to wrestle out. And so rejection is in so many ways like the antithesis of that. It plays toward that belonging and that need to belong, and it plays toward that need for significance and that meaning, that my life has meaning within this community. So when you're rejected, it pushes against that. One of the other core longings is simply to be loved, right? Human beings were created to experience love. So what I mean by that is to love one another, to be loved and to love. And when you're rejected, it is severing so many of these things that we've been created to experience and look for and long for. And rejection is ultimately, just I'm going to cut you off in so many ways from what you've been created to experience. And so I think ultimately, and we all struggle with this, but ultimately, but like I believe you've been created to experience those longings inside of a relationship with God. Ultimate, like that the highest form of those longings are satisfied, are filled inside of a relationship with Jesus. Yeah. So you're always going to look for love until you find it in the one who created you in love. You're going to try to find it in ways and shapes and forms that are less than that love. Not that they're bad, they're just less than. And so I see this happen, like what happens, people get married and then they, let's say they have kids. The kids become like the thing, like that they are your meaning in life. Your life's existence is to raise these kids and to love them and to see them successful. And that's a good inclination. But how many couples do you and I see over our careers who become empty nesters and then eventually separate?
Just implodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You haven't taken that time. It's funny that you bring that up. My niece, 16 years old, she's in high school. She FaceTimed me last night and she's like, "Hey, I have some questions. I'm doing a project on parenting for school." And the first question that she asked was like, how do parents like make sure they like make time for each other after having like a newborn, a kid?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. That is the challenge, and you have to do that. Otherwise, exactly what you're describing. If you don't at least at times prioritize your marital relationship, by the time that kid leaves, it's like, what do you have left? Yeah.
So I would even take it one step further because I think couples that end up in that position end up in it for a variety of very difficult reasons.
Sure. Yeah.
But what I do see is when people get married, the marriage becomes the most important thing, like the idol. And then when they have kids, the kids become the idol. And then when the kids grow up and leave, well, they've just shifted one idol for us. So this hasn't been worked on.
You're not likely to go back to the spouse being the idol, because that's old news.
when actually what was problematic is that the marriage was the idol to begin with. And so it's, I think until we find ultimately a source of, or what it is like to be loved by God, we will prioritize our loving relationships and put them in places that they weren't meant to be.
Yeah.
So whether that's, we elevate the marriage, or we elevate the kids, or we elevate the friendship, or we elevate whatever it is, we're putting it in. We're looking for something that ultimately you're created to experience inside a relationship with God. Yeah. So like it happens with love, I think, belonging, community, like all of it. What the Christian invitation is to find those core identity longings, those pieces, ultimately, firstly, inside of your relationship with Jesus, and then to work them out inside of your relationship with other people. But again, like until that first relationship is first. So I think of some of the letters in Revelation, right? You've forgotten your first love. That I think that we misprioritize things. And, just to come back to rejection, I think the firmer, and this is what you've said, the firmer or the more solid, concrete, lived out, experienced your identity is inside of relationship with Jesus, the less emphasis you're going to put on kind of trying to grab these other relationships, and the less you're going to give them credit for things that don't belong there.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're not going to, the rejection still sucks.
Yeah, it still stings. Yeah.
And it's hard. Yeah. And sometimes you're rejected for horrible reasons. You're like, what's that about? And sometimes you need to hear rejection and go, oh, okay, I got some stuff to work on. Either way, it still sucks. Like it's not pleasant. But I think where we fall apart is when we're accidentally or implicitly looking for those things inside of those relationships that are really truly meant to be found in God. So just to take it really practical, you're rejected at work to some degree or another. Maybe it's your ideas, maybe it's for a promotion, maybe it's that you've been laid off, maybe it's that you're fired. For whatever reason, you have rejection at work. Well, if work's my idol, like if I live to work, if my identity is my job, if all that I am is this profession, then that rejection is going to shatter your identity as a human being.
Absolutely.
And I go, that's not the way we were created. So again, that's not to like heap shame and guilt on people who be like, I'm already feeling rejected and now you're telling me it's my fault. No, that's not what I'm saying.
No.
What I'm saying is, I think the important work that the Christian can do is to deepen your relationship with Jesus, grow your spiritual health, your emotional health inside of that place, find inside of that place those things that you're longing for, and you'll still experience rejection, but it won't shatter the core of who you are.
I think there's something worth naming just as we're talking about rejection, that there is a type of rejection that is so deep. I'm thinking about like kids whose, parents rejected them. Right. The kind of thing that just feels like a betrayal of the way that things ought to be. Right. And that sort of person where a loved one rejected them in some like deep betrayal or whatever. Right. Like that is the kind of stuff that like you're going to feel that regardless of how concrete your relationship is with Christ. You're going to feel that deeply. And some of that kind of stuff is going to need some extra help, right? There's like like some therapy and things like that. I just want to name that is like, if you are listening to this and you have some like just deep seated rejection that's like from your childhood or trauma, like that's not something we can just sort of like, we can't always just strengthen our relationship with Christ and hope for the best, right? Like there's often some other stuff that we got to unpack there with the Lord, right? And with sometimes a professional.
Yep.
Just a little pitch.
Always. We should end every podcast with a pitch to go to therapy.
Yeah.
Great. I think a really good, helpful resource in that vein that I've found is Peter Scazzero's Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. And his whole, one-liner is that you cannot be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I believe the inverse is also true. And I think he would say it as well, that you can't be emotionally mature fully without also being spiritually mature. Those things need to progress together. But we've got a lot of people who sound spiritually mature, but who are emotionally immature. And so it's helpful to start talking in that direction of being okay with, hey, you've got some emotional health things that will accompany your spiritual journey, and that's great. So Peter Scazzero's stuff I found really helpful. He has a 30-day or 40, might be a 40-day like daily office. That's also just really a good resource. And then Henry Nouwen's stuff on just that like inner child longing to be loved, wound and or longing. Some of his stuff is just fantastic for slowing down and reading through it in a way that just like for me anyways, like it's just spoken to my soul. So too helpful resources.
So, and the disciples here, are, I think you could make a strong case that they were not exactly emotionally mature or even spiritually mature here in this moment. And so they respond to this rejection in a way that, yes, calls back to the prophets, and there's a large context, but ultimately it is, their response to rejection is those other two R words, revenge and retribution. And so I want to talk about that a little bit, and our inclination as a people, and even at times as Christians, to respond in ways that are deeply unchristlike and unhelpful. And it's, likely not going to be us requesting, Jesus, if we can call down fire on people. Like that's typically not going to be the thing. At least I hope not, dear listener. But I think there are times when we do wish ill upon people in even in our mind, right?
So it might be helpful to name. I certainly hope people aren't like calling down fire from heaven. I think we see imprecatory psalms all through the book of Psalms. I think there's a right place to wrestle some of that out with God in a good, right way. So I think naming anger is a good thing. The desire that the disciples have is a little different. It's, should we do this? Like, we got a category for it. Like, Jesus, is this our time? Like, can we kill these guys? Is this it? Is really what they're asking for. And so that is different than, say, praying with the language of the imprecatory Psalms. Like, God, would you do this? Is different than saying, hey, Jesus, can we call down fire from heaven? And
underneath it, with a lot of those Psalms and other parts of Scripture, it's ultimately a cry for justice to be done, right? And in this case, like the people just happened to reject them this time, right? Like, it's not like they, I mean, the scripture doesn't say here that there was any sort of like violence toward them, or so we can't infer that. But it feels like this goes beyond the realm of like, just like, hey, we want justice.
It feels like it's like disproportionate response. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, okay, but let's talk for a minute though about some of the ways we do call down fire from heaven. Because practically speaking, I think this can look very different and maybe not as dangerous, but like almost as dangerous as the disciples. So the end of the story is that they don't call fire down from heaven. That's not what happens here. But the desire to do it is, I think, something that we all wrestle with.
And something that Jesus speaks to.
Right. And so Jesus rebukes them, right, for this. And I think that, if we're not literally calling down fire from heaven, I think we call down fire from heaven online in how we post and respond and react. Like, I think the anger with which I see people posting and writing and speaking online is in line with the disciples, like often in line with how the disciples respond. So I think we can call down fire online. I think we can go scorched earth on relationships. So, you reject me. So rather than confronting you and discussing it and being vulnerable about my hurt, I'm just going to burn this bridge to the ground. And I think I said, like, jokingly on Sunday, it's like you're not going to break up with me. Like, I'll break up with you first.
You can't fire me. I quit.
Exactly. Like that gut response is the disciples' response. So I think it's easy to say, well, I didn't call down fire from heaven and I didn't pray asking Jesus to murder these people.
But did you go and write a Google review just like decimating that company for the little thing that they got wrong on your like Uber Eats order or something, Right.
Yeah. Or just the vile comments that are left on social media, and how easily it seems like people are willing to show the worst parts of themselves in those comments because they're hidden kind of like behind this glass wall.
And there are some, like, say, something like Facebook where, generally you're not anonymous. So it's your name and your, profile picture, etc. Not all the time. But like in that instance, I think people are still getting pretty full on these days, it feels like, but it's even worse where there is any degree of anonymity. Because you just, the guard comes off. All of the inner thoughts, which is, I think, interesting to kind of go into a little bit. Like, all the inner thoughts end up coming out because you don't need a filter because you don't have anyone to be accountable to.
Yeah. So what are we seeing right now in 2025 is that people are starting to be fired for what they say online.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a rabbit trail we probably don't want to go down. Like, right or wrong, free speech, like, let's not go down that trail. But there are starting to be at least consequences. And you can agree with them or not. You can like say right or wrong, but we're starting to wrestle that out. Like, should there be consequences to what people write online?
Yeah.
Like, probably, right? Should the group of teenagers who bully a kid endlessly until they do something about it, should they be held accountable? Like there are situations where, I think we're starting to see that happen. But I would challenge anybody, like, if you're listening to this, and you have like an anonymous account, that's probably like, that's the same spirit here as the disciples. And even if not, if you're just like brazen with it and we're like, I don't care if people see that it's connected to me. Like, I wish that people thought for a few seconds longer before reacting online. So I think we do that. We do it in real world. I'm giving like air quotes here, like as well, like face-to-face relationships where we do react and torch long-standing relationships because we're hurt. I think at the end of the day, there's like that cliche line, hurt people or hurting people hurt people.
Yep.
And rejection is a legitimate hurt.
Yeah.
So when you are hurt, what are you prone to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's at the end of the day, that's the question that I need to wrestle with. Like, when I'm hurt, what is my initial gut, like, punch back kind of response? Because that's going to be different for everybody. I don't blow up on like Twitter and go like scorched earth online. Like, that's just not what I'm inclined to do. But what is the thing that I'm inclined to do? Because for some it is like to vent and to rant or to post or whatever.
Been there.
For others, it's in person.
Yeah.
Right? So we just go like push away. I think when I look at the course of my life, that would be like when I'm rejected, I go to that place of, okay, fine, I just don't care. I'm going to cut this off.
Right.
And whether that's like a confrontation or just like I'm going to leave, like that would be where my heart goes when I'm when I feel rejected, when I feel hurt. It's toward that, okay, whatever, this doesn't, like, I'm going to pretend that this doesn't matter, and I'm going to cut and turn, right? So that's something that, like, when I'm at my worst, I want to just, avoid or ignore or walk away or cut off and just be done. And that's it. Like, I'm done. At my best, it's, okay, I know that that's my inclination. How do I lean in and actually learn to say, I'm hurt?
Yeah. That's the difference between, there's this kind of common theme over the course of scripture that starts all the way back in like Genesis 4 when Cain kills Abel, where it's like the beast is crouching at the door. This imagery of like our worst desires and tendencies that come most naturally to us are always there, ready to go, and the art of becoming like Jesus is that we work to overcome by the help of the Spirit in us, right? We work to overcome the worst inclinations that we have. And that's what you're describing there is like, hey, this is at my worst. This is what I want to do. When I am more centered in who I am in Christ and who I am, I can work at it from a different angle, And I was just reminded of, when we're talking about this and Jesus's words in Matthew 5 about violence. He says, you've heard it said to people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the courts. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Like, Jesus has very strong words for not just the outward action of violence, but the inward posture that we carry toward people. And you're like, you got to deal with that. Otherwise, it's going to make its way out in some way. Yeah. Whether it's on a keyboard or in person.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Which so often, I love those teachings where Jesus begins like, "You've heard it said, but I say to you." And I go, "Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah,
like, let me have it.
Yeah.
What am I prone to do?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? Like, I'm in." But I think all of Jesus's teachings is much more like, it's not about behavior modification. Like, we're not talking. It's not just, do the right thing.
Doing that.
Yeah, so you can become a good person. Like, Jesus actually wants to transform your heart. So you start to actually feel the thing that you wrestle with diminish, right? It's not just that. So it is. I agree with you. Like, you become able to face the worst parts of yourself and say, I'm not going to do that. We actually believe happens, though, is that those pieces begin themselves to diminish, like those voices. I don't mean literal voices, but like those voices or inclinations lose their power over you. So you start to what you are inclined toward is toward the good, and that's when you know, like, okay, like Jesus is actually like working on my heart and my posture toward God, toward myself, and toward others, as opposed to, all right, like, and it needs to start. Like, you just need to start by just like arresting the thing.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just gonna not do the thing. I'm gonna choose to do it. Like, I'm gonna choose to name it. I'm gonna choose to lean in, and though that's a hard, like, screeching halt sometimes. And then slowly what God does is he changes your heart and what you are inclined toward, and not into perfection. But I think you start to see the fruit of the positive things, reactions, ways of being, etc. So I think it's Paul, and I would need to go look, but he's talking about like orderly communion and orderly worship, and he's like, if you come to the table and there remember that your brother has something against you, stop.
1 Corinthians 11, I want to say.
Go and be reconciled.
10.
And then return and take communion. And it was a long time ago. I remember the first time that I sat and wondered, should I take communion? Should I be like, because I think the behavior modification thing is, I'm going to take it, and this will help me the next time round just be a better person. The heart posture change is, no, I'm going to not take this. I'm going to first go. I'm going to be reconciled, and then I will come and take communion.
Yeah.
I can picture exactly where I was sitting when I wrestled that out for the first time in my life, and went, I don't know that I can. Like, I need to stop. So, I like that. I think that's ultimately my hope for myself, and for others, is that level of not behavior modification, but heart transformation.
I think I've seen that play out in my life. Like, I've often talked about my, like my feisty onlineness on Twitter X.
It will always be Twitter.
It'll always be Twitter, but you just, I don't want to anger some people. So I'll give it both names, but like, and I think there was a season where I felt I had to have a reaction to everything. And eventually it just became exhausting, and like I was constantly anxious and constantly on edge, and just realizing this is really bad for my mental, emotional, spiritual health. And over time, now a part of this has been like me almost totally withdrawing from social media, except when absolutely necessary. Because I'm like, my like temptation and just like propensity to want to respond, so it used to be that like I would have half-written responses, and they were probably more antagonistic than they needed to be. And then I would erase them and just be like, I'm not going to do this. Okay. And then eventually it's like, now it's gone to the point where it's like, I actually just don't even need to give that any further headspace, you know? And like the world is not going to end by me not responding to that, and the Lord has worked on me, and I've been very slow to learn, but
I think that's the benefit of a discipline, though, too, in your life, like just to name that piece, and call it a discipline, call it a habit, call it a rule. Like I do think that there's a reason why. Oh man, I remember I have these like glimpses of memories from this one's from my childhood, but I remember we drove out west for the first time. And if you've ever driven the Rocky Mountains across Canada, like so Cascades, Rocky, I couldn't tell you exactly which of those two passes it is, but there's like a good stretch where you're driving through the mountains and there are no guardrails. I'm like, I can't, like, what is happening? I can't handle it.
It's terrifying. Yeah.
And then I remember the first time I did it driving, like as the driver, with my kid in the back. And I'm like, what? Like, what is like? Why are we like this? Now we're like, 30 years later, we're still doing the no guardrail thing here.
Yeah, and then in like mountainous Peru, on mud roads.
Right. And like there is a place for guardrails. I remember the first time I went snowboarding in the United States on the West Coast, where they don't have, like, if you've ever been skiing or snowboarding, our chairlifts, all of them in Ontario, have those little ka-thunk, like buckle things that collapse over your waist. So we have like baby mountains here. They're like little bumps, and big mountains, they don't have them. So again, I remember the first time I'm doing this, I'm like, this is horrible. I'm never going to, like, there's no joy in it. I'm not having fun. My anxiety is through the roof. Like, I'm shaking like crazy. Now I got to snowboard down this mountain and do it all over again because we're on the opposite side. Like, I just think there's a goodness to these rules of life or these habits, these disciplines that for each of us, we know are just going to put us in better positions to succeed with certain things. So like online engagement on social media, probably one of those arenas, right? Where it's in the long run healthy.
Yeah.
So it's what we're doing, like what disciplines, what habits, spiritual disciplines, I should say, spiritual disciplines and habits cultivate are that ease toward what is right and good.
Yeah.
Instead of making it easy toward what we know is reactive and drives us insane, like toward anger and just frustration with ourselves and with others.
Yeah. It's only just going to damage our relationships with people that we love and people that we are called to love, even if they are not our, friends, right? And that's the hard thing for me is like, not only does some of this division interrupt our the connection with our family and closest friends, but people that Jesus calls us to love, right? That Jesus calls us to love neighbor, enemy alike. And so if what we are doing and the way whatever's happening in our heart is impeding on that, we got to look inside and say, what's going on here, Lord? Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the last things that I see in this passage, which we didn't spend a lot of time on Sunday, is the idea of being comfortable in the rebuke. Right. So like the disciples Jesus rebukes the disciples, which is something that we've typically seen Jesus do toward demons and evil spirits. Right. So he rebukes the spirit. He rebukes the demon. He rebukes what is evil. And like, I think many of us, and I say maybe most of us, like, we want the Jesus who's like, I'm going to reassure you and comfort you and make you feel great about yourself. And yeah, like in many instances, Jesus leads us away from shame and toward learning to embrace who we are, toward life, toward peace. Like, those are gifts that God gives. But I think I need to learn to be comfortable in the rebuke.
Yeah.
And in learning that, no, there are times when that's the level of language that Jesus would use toward me for my actions and thoughts. And what I know and what I believe to be true about Jesus is that the rebuke is toward life. So when Jesus rebukes an evil spirit, it's to lead a person in a community toward life, right? When he rebukes an illness, it's toward health and healing and wholeness and restoration. There's another R, right?
There you go.
And so here he rebukes the disciples, and which is an uncomfortable thing. But what he's doing is he's confronting their sin. He's speaking against it. It's a word of judgment. It's a word that I think at the end of the day, really ultimately only Jesus can speak in its fullness, in its entirety. It puts it in its place so that the disciples, so that they can move on, so that they went on to another village.
He and his disciples went to another village. Yeah, it freed them. It freed them to be able to leave that situation. And I think it obviously, because they didn't call fire down on these people, it freed up the Samaritan people to be able to experience the gospel, as you kind of alluded to in the sermon, that when you go into Acts, you see, Jesus saying, this message will go out to Jerusalem, Samaria, Judea, the ends of the world, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, there's something incredible about Jesus not only wanting to better his disciples and say, like, hey guys, this ain't the thing. Like, let's move on from here, and I'm gonna teach you a better way. But also the freedom that it causes for the people in that village, that they're not destroyed, and one day can again receive the message of Jesus. Yeah.
So, like, I think it's beautiful that they went to another village.
Yeah.
Like, it's Jesus is demonstrating exactly how he wants them to be,
as he said at the beginning of Luke 9.
Yeah. But he frees them up to do it.
Yeah.
And then leads them in that direction.
Yeah.
And that direction for them leads toward life. Like, it still takes Jesus toward Jerusalem and the cross and his death and resurrection. Like, his direction for them is one that leads to their own life and to their own redemption and restoration, as well as for this Samaritan village. So I think learning that piece is difficult, but being comfortable with the way Jesus would rebuke me, and then choosing to trust that it's going to lead toward life. I think the other thing that I see here is that, like, the disciples, and again, like, it's not here, but it's also not here. The disciples, like, there's no shame and guilt. There's no like, how could you be so stupid to think that you could call down fire from heaven? Like, he speaks very swiftly against that thought and that question and that act and action in them, and then moves on. Right? There's not this lingering, I'm going to make you feel the weight of your shame and guilt, and let's just soak here for a minute and, like, feel horrible about ourselves. And, like, again, but that's the human inclination, is we want someone else to feel as bad as they made us. That's what revenge, retribution, like, that's what we're trying to accomplish. But then we turn around and we feel horrible about who we are in those moments and wrestle it out. What is ironic in a beautiful way is that Jesus's rebuke leads to life. It doesn't lead to shame and guilt and soaking in the, like, pool of horrible, like, self-loathing. It allows them to be freed to move on and to keep moving in the direction that Jesus is leading them. And that's what I need to learn to trust for my own life. And it's what you listeners, I think each of us needs to learn and figure out and wrestle out, is choosing to trust that especially in those moments of rebuke, like, that's where you can also experience the greatest life on the other side of it.
Absolutely. So we do hope that this was helpful for you, as Grant said at the beginning, to have conversations with friends, family, and we hope that this is just helping us to all work on some of these inner pieces of our life that shape who we are and how we live out as followers of Jesus, and as we seek to enact the kingdom in our city, in our world. And so if you do have questions, you can send the questions into questions@courtrightchurch.org. And we usually, record some point, often on Monday, not always. And so if you get those questions in on the Sunday afternoon or Monday morning, we're likely to see that. And so we do hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.